should you buy Sniper Elite 4 in 2024? Sniper Elite 4 originally released in February 2017 and is a game much like its predecessors, focusing on the same core idea of taking down targets akin to games such as the Hitman series, and a story primarily focused on the assassination of key individuals, mainly fictional, in a World War II setting. I first played Sniper Elite 4 for the first time a few years ago, and just randomly felt like playing the game again a couple months ago, and so I did just that. I've also played through Sniper Elite 5 when that came out, and Sniper Elite 3 as well, both of which are awesome games in their own right. But Sniper Elite 4 may be the contender for my favorite due to its super fun gameplay loop, interesting locations for assassinations, and an okay narrative. First, we'll be discussing the game's story, of course without any spoilers throughout the video. Like the games before it, Sniper Elite 4 focuses on certain events and places in World War II, and this time you've been placed right into Italy in 1943. The game's plot is extremely simple, and is definitely not a reason that you'd consider when picking the game up. Without spoilers of course, the game's main plot focuses on the dismantling of the development of a weapon being created by the Germans in order to push back the Allies on the Western Front. As you can imagine, that in and of itself is an extremely simple baseline for a story, and the game's story mainly focuses on you taking down certain operations and military personnel that are directly correlated in the development of this German superweapon. Of course, I can't delve much into the story's specific details and what else you can expect without spoiling the game's narrative, but again, I'd like to reiterate, the game's narrative isn't something that you should look forward to or is a main center point of the game, but it was never supposed to be. I think a great comparison in this regard would be the World of Assassination trilogy of Hitman games, in which the story really is just a backbone to take you to all of the game's beautiful and encapsulating locations for assassinations and targets, rather than actually being a complex and well interwoven story. The plot is never the reason I think most people would even pick these types of games up, as they really shine on the forefront of their gameplay mechanics and the environments that complement the story, rather than the story itself being a key driver as to what makes the game so fun in the first place. The most interesting component of the game's story is by far your interactions and collaboration with the Italian resistance in the war that many of the game's cutscenes revolve around. The dynamic between a couple of the characters within that resistance and the game's main character, who is the main character of all Sniper Elite games, Carl Fairburn, is an interesting one for sure, and the okay voice acting in addition to the game's environments make it a somewhat engaging story that strings you along, at least in your very first playthrough. To sum up here in this section, I did enjoy the first time I played through the game's campaign in terms of the story component, but it really is just a complementary factor to the game's mainstay component in its amazing gameplay systems and mechanics, in addition to its vast environments and locations, and so I wouldn't recommend picking this game up purely based on the story aspect alone. Now it's time to discuss the main reason you'd even buy this game in the first place, the game's super fun and engaging gameplay mechanics and systems. Quickly, however, I want to talk about one of the game's other mainstays in the game's absolutely vast and diverse landscapes in the different locations you'll be venturing into throughout the game. These environments are not only extremely beautiful and captivating, capturing the beauty of Italy in the time period, but they also provide so much variety and opportunities for you to undertake and the different ways you can traverse these landscapes. You can climb, hang, or shimmy on railings and pipes to get to more strategic positions, or to find a good point of entry to take down your target in a stealthy and clean fashion without making any noise. Each environment is just so different from one another, and of course for spoiler purposes I'll not be showing all of them, but man, these locations are truly stunning and offer a lot of gameplay variety, which makes the entire gameplay loop in the game itself just that much more fun. Now getting into the actual gameplay, for an easy comparison, this game is much like the Hitman games again in terms of a stealth focused game focused on assassinations of certain targets that end with your extraction, all done from a third person perspective. But what really differentiates this game from the Hitman games, for example, is the game's title itself in the sniper part. This game's stealth and every objective is so focused on the game's rifle selection and how you utilize these rifles to take down the targets in each mission. But the game doesn't just have the typical snipers you see in many other other games, but rather the sniping is literally the core component of the entire gameplay system in all of the Sniper Elite games. Every environment in the game is so clearly built around how you can use different vantage points and covers in order to use your rifle both suppressed and unsuppressed to take down your targets while slipping back into the shadows and away from direct contact. The game's sniping is definitely my favorite part of the gameplay, and honestly, unlike other games such as Hitman again, where when I get caught I just revert to full direct contact with guns, Sniper Elite 4 makes you cautiously look for cover and to get away from enemy sight, so you can once again make use of that rifle. The way in which the game's sniper rifles are so unique is through the manner in which when sniping, you have to consider a number of variables in order to ensure that you're actually getting a clean shot that doesn't just involve multiple shots of which may be detrimental in revealing your position to the enemy. These variables include the weather conditions in the certain location you are currently in, so the wind for example, as well as taking into consideration bullet drop that is extremely realistic, which will see you really trying to align your rifle in the correct position before you even consider taking a shot. And of course, the game's most important component in this regard, the heart rate of your character. The heart rate will constantly increase when you are running or focus too long on the scope of your sniper, and it's extremely important to watch this heart rate meter while you try to take down your enemies. This is because if your heart rate exceeds the optimum level, your scope and aim will become shaky, meaning you could easily miss the shot you had lined up earlier, which would again reveal your location and could really put a dent on your efforts to do stealth in the game. I saw myself constantly monitoring my heart rate, walking and crouching slowly through enemy areas in order to ensure that my heart rate was at a consistently low level so I could take down enemies quickly when the time arrived. This mechanic is easily one of my favorites and isn't extremely egregious to the point of annoyance. Rather, it's really an immersion boosting mechanic that makes the game even more tactical and stealth focused while still allowing you to go guns blazing if your heart so desires it. Sniper Elite 4 clearly wasn't built for the player to simply grab the SMGs they find on the ground and go around killing everyone in your path. But of course that is an option, and is an option I did sometimes use if I just couldn't find a good and sneaky path in taking out my target. But the game makes you want to use that rifle through other simple mechanics that makes the kills with the rifles just so much more satisfying than taking down an enemy with simple SMG fire, for example. This is in the game's X-ray kill cams, which is essentially a camera that is focused on following your bullet from your rifle all the way through from where you shot your rifle to where the enemy is currently standing. But what makes it so satisfying is that the bullet not only goes through the air in slow motion, but highlights the specific part of the enemy you shot. So for example, if you shoot at the enemy's heart, it will show the bullet going through the heart when it's going through the kill cam. And this is the same for any other part, such as the enemy's leg, hand, or head. But this kill cam isn't simply focused on the shots you take at enemies, but also where you shoot in the environment to create a distraction or to take down enemies in a more than explosive way. For example, if I were to shoot at the engine of a truck where a few enemies were standing by, the kill cam would again display the bullet in slow motion, making contact with the engine and then exploding, creating an absolutely explosive environment, and of which is extremely satisfying while you're playing the game. This kill cam and the other factors involved with the game's rifle usage just make it so satisfying to use the rifle to take down enemies and cause explosions wherever you are, and is really the biggest highlight in the game's gameplay in my opinion. So to conclude, I believe you should absolutely buy Sniper Elite 4 in 2024. The game is still so much fun even 7 years after it first came out, and I personally was able to buy the game on Steam for just $5, and for the amount of replayability you can get out of the game in its mission design and the utilization of different opportunities and the incredibly satisfying gameplay loop, it's an absolute steal for the price. Anyway everyone, that's it from me for today's video. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.